They stood beneath the morning flag coffee cups, steaming against the chill, while a brass band stumbled through a march no one quite knew. The general mocked her step voice polite, but cutting the kind of insult dressed up as humor that makes a crowd smile wrong. Then the sun caught the ribbon on her chest, a quiet flare of color that froze every breath in the square. Quietly they rose from their benches, whispering "ma'am," as if the town itself had remembered its manners. "Let me take you back." Veterans Day, morning in East Haven broke with the soft brass of a marching band echoing down Main Street. Flags rippled from every porch rail, the scent of maple donuts mingling with the chill of early November. Daniel Rook stood near the platform where the town had gathered old soldiers in faded caps, children waving small flags, church ladies arranging paper cups of cider. He held himself straight, hands behind his back, the sun flashing across the small ribbon pinned to his chest. General Cliff Haynes, the guest of honor, climbed the steps and tapped the microphone until it squealed. He was still sharp in his posture uniform, tailored as if he never left the service. When his gaze swept the crowd and landed on Rook, something narrow and amused flickered there. "Well, look who turned up. Careful not to trip on that ribbon, Chief." The joke floated out like a pebble tossed into a quiet lake. Laughter rippled, a few nervous chuckles, a few genuine. Rook didn't answer. He only shifted his weight once, the movement deliberate, almost ceremonial. The wind caught the corner of a banner and sent a stripe of shadow across his face. Trip, he thought. Everyone trips eventually, on memory, on pride. But not today. A church choir behind the bandstand hummed a low harmony, trying to fill the silence the laughter left behind. The notes trembled in the dry air, then settled like dust. Rook's eyes followed the flag lifting on its rope until it cracked once in the wind. He felt the familiar pressure in his chest, the kind that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with remembering too much. From the crowd, a camera clicked. Liam Turner, barely 20, the local newspaper's new photographer, framed Rook through his lens. The man didn't smile, didn't frown, just stood there, eyes steady beneath the brim of his old service cap. Through the viewfinder, Liam caught the flash of the ribbon catching light, a color between bronze and memory. "Guess that's the shot," he murmured to himself. The program stumbled on. Speeches about sacrifice, about community, about remembering. Rook heard them, but they passed through him like wind through canvas. He wasn't here for the words. He had come because the invitation had said mandatory for all past honorees, and because habit was a harder thing to break than bone. When the final note of the anthem faded, people clapped, the sound uneven but sincere. Mayor Helen Cruz, her winter coat buttoned to the chin, stepped down from the stage and made her way toward him. Her shoes crunched on the gravel path. For a moment she just looked at him, the quiet line of his shoulders, the ribbon that seemed too small for the weight it carried. "You showed up," she said softly, almost lost under the returning chatter. "That matters." Rook nodded once, no speech, no defense. The sunlight flared against the ribbon again, and for an instant, the noise of the crowd blurred into a single, warm hum, the kind you feel more than hear. Then the sound returned, band packing up, children laughing, the choir drifting away. He exhaled slow and steady, like a man finishing a long duty he hadn't realized was still his. The bell over the diner door gave a tired jingle when Daniel Rook stepped inside. Morning glare spilled through the windows, tinting the chrome and formica with a honey-colored warmth. The Veterans Parade had drifted off toward the fairground, leaving the place mostly empty, except for 2 truckers at the counter and a waitress named June, refilling mugs as if on autopilot. Rook took the booth farthest from the door, the one facing the street. He liked watching people leave. It made the room quieter somehow. He placed his cap on the table and wrapped his hands around the mug when June poured without asking. "On the house today," she said. "You earned it." He offered a small nod. "Coffee's thanks enough." She smiled and moved on, shoes squeaking on the linoleum. The radio above the pie case muttered through the static, a local station playing Old Swing between weather reports. The voice crackled soft and far-away highs, in the 50s chance of rain by evening. He took a slow sip. The heat of the cup grounded him, the taste simple honest. The door jingled again. Liam Turner shuffled in camera bag, slung over one shoulder, the excitement of youth still bouncing around him even after a long morning. He spotted Rook immediately. "Mind if I sit?" Rook gestured to the opposite booth seat. "It's a free country." Liam slid in, set the camera on the vinyl, and looked awkwardly at the menu he didn't intend to read. "Didn't expect to see you here." The general, well, that was something. Rook's eyes didn't leave the window. Everyone's got a job to do. His is talking. Liam laughed quietly, unsure if it was permission to continue. "That ribbon you're wearing." "What's it for?" Rook traced the rim of his mug with one finger. "It's for doing the same thing long enough that someone noticed." "That's it," he shrugged. "Just kept machines from breaking. The planes don't fly if the parts don't fit." Liam leaned forward. "So you were a mechanic, still am in my head?" Rook gave a faint half-smile. "The difference is, now the things that break don't make noise first." For a moment they both listened to the hiss of the coffee pot and the slow scrape of June's shoes. Sunlight slanted across the table, catching the scratches in the formica little constellations of use. Liam hesitated, then blurted, "How come they didn't say your name?" The words hung there heavier than he meant. The trucker's laughter at the counter faded to background static. Rook set down his cup with care. "Some stories sound better when no one knows who fixed them," he said quietly. The radio crackled, cutting through the tension. "And now a tune for our veterans out there." A faint march began, muffled by static. It filled the silence between them like smoke. Liam swallowed. "I didn't mean—" "I know," Rook said. "Curiosity's a good habit. Just be careful where you aim it." June returned with the pot, refilling both mugs. "You boys doing all right?" Liam nodded too fast. "Yes, ma'am. Perfect." She smiled and moved away. The march on the radio shifted into a ballad, the kind that made you stare out the window and think about everything you'd already lived through. Rook reached into his wallet, pulled out an old photo, edges, soft corners creased. A group of men in coveralls, faces smeared with oil and pride, leaning against an aircraft's wheel. "Those are the ones worth remembering," he said. Liam studied the photo eyes, tracing each face. Maybe it's time people did. Rook folded the picture back into his wallet. Maybe, he said, and left a $1 tip under the mug. The bell over the door jingled again, the sound fading into the radio's last notes of the march. The East Haven post office always smelled faintly of paper and machine oil, the kind of scent that never left even when the floors were polished and the counters redone. That afternoon, Mayor Helen Cruz pushed through the glass door, the little brass bell ringing above her. The place was quiet, except for the shuffle of envelopes and the soft rhythm of the ceiling fan. She carried a stack of folders marked Parade Records Leftovers from the Ceremony Planning Committee and set them on the clerk's counter. "Tom, mind if I use the back archive?" The clerk looked up from a postage roll. "Sure thing, Mayor. Key's where it's always been." She smiled, took the key from its hook, and moved through the narrow hallway into the archive room, half library, half attic. Dust floated in the air like tiny lanterns. Folders were stacked on metal shelves, some so old their labels had curled and fallen off. Helen wasn't sure what she was looking for, maybe a way to balance what she'd seen that morning. The laughter still echoed in her ears, that uneasy sound when the crowd didn't know if it should stop. She'd seen Rook's face afterward, still unflinching. It bothered her. In the back corner, a file cabinet stood slightly open. On the top drawer, the label read, East Haven Service Honors Air Force Support Personnel. She tugged it open. A folder slipped forward, its tab stamped in red, Do Not Post. Confidential. Her pulse jumped. Inside the folder was a cream envelope sealed and slightly yellowed with the official Air Force insignia embossed on the flap. On the front, handwritten in blue ink, Citation Tech, Sergeant Daniel Rook. She stared at it for a long moment. The door creaked. Mayor. It was Liam holding a small recorder camera bag slung over his shoulder. Sorry, Tom said you were back here. I'm doing a piece on the Veterans Day stories, local heroes kind of thing. She hesitated, then handed him the envelope. You might want to listen to this before you write anything. He clicked the recorder on the red light, blinking. Mind if I... Go ahead, she said softly. He broke the seal carefully. The paper inside crackled the handwriting, formal typed in an old font that looked almost ceremonial. For extraordinary service under fire during maintenance operations, maintaining control of mechanical systems aboard a grounded transport under hostile pressure actions, preventing loss of crew and equipment. Liam looked up stunned. He saved them. Helen nodded, and no one ever told him why it was never announced. The radio from the clerk's desk outside buzzed faintly through the doorway, some local news update blending with static. Do you think he knows? Liam asked. I think he stopped expecting answers, she said. He pressed the recorder closer. Then maybe we tell it for him. She smiled, tired proud. Make sure you tell it right. They stood in silence as the light shifted, slanting through the blinds. The fan above creaked once its rhythm slowing. Helen slipped the file back into the cabinet, but left the drawer half open, the envelope resting on top as if refusing to hide again. The fluorescent bulb overhead flickered, a hum building in the air. Then, just as Liam lifted his camera for a photo, the lights dimmed and everyone turned. The community hall glowed with low amber light, the scent of coffee and floor polish mixing beneath the hum of an old choir rehearsal. Folding chairs filled every aisle, the same townspeople from the parade now gathered again, this time, without flags, without fanfare. The veterans sat in front ribbons, pinned neat and straight. On the stage, General Cliff Haynes adjusted his notes. Once again he began East Haven honors, its sons who served and kept this country running. His voice carried the weight of formality, the kind that could polish truth until it lost its shine. Rook sat near the back cap, resting in his lap eyes on the scuffed floor. The ribbon on his chest caught the projector's idle glow like it was waiting for something. At the side wall, Liam set up the small screen. His recorder blinked red. Mayor Cruz leaned over. You sure about this? He nodded. It's time. The general's speech droned on, dates, divisions, service branches. The choir hummed softly, filling the pauses. Then the projector flicked alive, cutting a pale rectangle of light across the hall. The crowd blinked, confused. On screen, the photograph from the parade, Rook's silent son on the ribbon. A ripple moved through the room. Liam's voice broke the quiet. Before we close tonight, the paper has something to show you. A piece of East Haven history left in a drawer too long. He clicked again. The image changed the citation letter, its header stamped in blue, the words clear even from the back row. He read aloud, steady, his young voice trembling just enough to be human. For extraordinary service under fire during maintenance operations, actions preventing loss of crew and equipment. The hum of the choir stopped. The microphone in Haynes's hand lowered slowly. Someone near the front whispered, "That's Rook." The general turned face unreadable. He looked across the hall until his eyes found the man sitting quietly in the last row. "Sergeant Rook," he said at last, voice roughened by something that wasn't authority. "Stand up." For a moment, Rook didn't move. He'd spent years learning to stay small in rooms like this. Then he rose slow and deliberate. The light from the projector painted his shoulders, the ribbon glowing like a second heartbeat. Haynes swallowed. "There are rules," he managed. Back then, certain recognitions couldn't be made public. Rook met his gaze. "You mean I was slammed by Protocol General?" His tone was calm, almost kind. "But this time, I'll stand anyway." A murmur swept through the crowd. The choir's conductor lowered her sheet music. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was reverent. Haynes stepped back then, after a breath, raised his hand in a full salute. "You kept the machines alive. We all made it home because of you." Rook returned the salute, smaller but truer. Liam caught the moment through the lens, the projector's beam washing over them, the dust in the air turning to gold. Somewhere a child clapped first. Then the whole hall followed slowly, unsure, and then all at once. The sound swelled against the rafters, echoed down the hallway and out into the cold night. Rook lowered his arm, a small smile pulling at the edge of his mouth. For once, he didn't mind the light on him. By evening, East Haven had softened back into its small-town rhythm. The same diner lights glowed against the cooling glass, catching a halo on the chrome letters outside. Inside the booths were half-full families eating late. A few regulars lingering over pie. The air smelled of coffee and butter and something like relief. Daniel Rook pushed open the door, the bell giving its usual half-hearted jingle. Liam was already there, sleeves rolled, setting a small wooden display case on the counter. Inside, under a clean pane of glass, the ribbon lay centered on a folded piece of blue felt. Beneath it, a brass plate waited for a name. "Thought we'd try it here first," Liam said, "before it goes to the museum." Rook studied it a long moment. The reflection of the neon sign outside ran across the glass like a slow wave. "You picked a good spot," he said. "This counter's seen every kind of story this town ever told." June, the waitress, wandered over with the coffee pot. "You two planning a grand opening?" "Something like that," Liam said. She poured the coffee, left 2 sugar packets between them. "Well, make sure it's level. Folks notice when a thing leans." "Noted," Rook said, smiling. The 2 men crouched beside the wall, where a small bulletin board held old flyers, farm supply sales, church dinners, photographs of softball teams long gone. Liam lined up the tiny screws, hands slightly shaking. Rook steadied the case with one hand and passed over the screwdriver. "Guess you'll need a bigger shelf for the stories now," Liam said. Rook chuckled low and warm. "Stories don't take up much room. It's the truth that's heavy." Liam pressed the last screw into place, careful tongue caught between his teeth. "How's that?" Rook leaned back, eyed the brass plate. "Almost. Slide it just a hair to the left. You want the light to catch the edge of the name." He showed him how fingers tracing the line where metal met wood. "See, that's the trick. Doesn't look like much, but it's how you tell if a thing's built right." Liam nodded. "Like the planes you worked on." "Exactly like that," Rook said. "Only this one's gonna stay grounded." Outside, the porch swing creaked under a soft breeze. Someone on the sidewalk whistled the end of a hymn. The radio behind the counter crackled through a weather update, then drifted into an old country song, slow, nostalgic, the kind that fills the quiet without asking permission. June topped their mugs once more. "That looks just right," she said, admiring the display. "About time the town saw what they've been drinking coffee next to all these years." Rook smiled a little, embarrassed. "It's just a ribbon." "Maybe," she said, "but it's pointed in the right direction." Liam took a photo, the case glowing in the lamplight reflection of two figures on the glass, one young one lined with years. When the flash faded, they both just stood there, listening to the faint hiss of the coffee pot, the hum of the fridge, the quiet rhythm of a place that had finally evened out its heartbeat. Outside the diner's porch, light flickered once, and the street settled into the kind of silence that means everything's where it belongs. Rook lifted his cup. "To the shelf," he said. Liam clinked his mug against it. To the stories that didn't need headlines. Steam rose between them, curling and fading into the warm, easy night. Morning light poured through the high windows of the East Haven Veterans Museum, washing the polished floors in gold. The air held the faint scent of wax and paper. And outside, a choir was finishing its rehearsal, the notes drifting through the open doors like a soft tide. Inside, townspeople filled the hall in quiet rows, voices, low shoes echoing against the marble. At the far end stood the new display, a single ribbon beneath a pane of clear glass mounted on blue, felt the brass plate shining beneath it. A flag's reflection trembled across the surface, red and white blending with the ribbon's muted bronze. Mayor Helen Cruz stood at the podium, hands folded. "Today," she began, "we honor those who kept this town and each other steady when things might have fallen apart." Her words carried simply, unadorned. Behind her, Liam waited, holding the plaque he'd written for the museum. The recorder hung around his neck, the same one that had caught Rook's voice weeks earlier. He stepped forward when the mayor nodded. Clearing his throat, he read aloud, "For those who kept things together when it mattered." The sentence lingered in the hall, soft as a prayer. People began to rise from their chairs, not in a rush, but as if something had lifted them gently by the shoulders. The choir's hum folded back into the moment, a harmony that filled the gaps between heartbeats. Rook stood near the back, hat in hand. The light from the window stretched across the floor until it touched his shoes. For once, he didn't try to move out of the way. General Haynes, standing a few rows ahead, turned. His face was tired in the gentle light, the lines around his mouth softened. He gave a small bow, not the sharp military kind, but the quiet one men give when they finally understand each other. Rook nodded in return. No words, no ceremony, just the kind of acknowledgement that means something is finished and something else has been passed on. Around them, the crowd whispered the sound, gathering like wind through leaves. "That's him. That's the one." The phrase spread, weaving through the pews until the entire hall seemed to breathe in unison. Liam raised his camera. Through the lens, he saw the reflection of the people in the glass, their faces blending with the ribbon, with the flag, with everything the town had once overlooked. He clicked the shutter. The flash was brief, almost gentle. Rook exhaled, steady. The light in the case shifted slightly as a cloud moved past the sun. For a moment, it looked like the ribbon itself was glowing. The ribbon caught the light again, and so did the town. Outside, the choir began a slow march tune, softer than any anthem. The music trailed out through the open doors and across Main Street, where the flags fluttered once more in the morning breeze. Rook stepped out into that light shoulder square, the sound of the hymn following him. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. If this story moved you, share it forward. The museum doors stayed open that afternoon, and sunlight spilled across the floor like a quiet benediction. Still, people moved slower now, reading the brass plate, tracing the words with gentle fingers before walking away. Rook stood beside the case, coffee in hand, the smell mixing with floor wax and hymn dust. No speeches, no cameras, just a town learning how to look kindly at its own reflection. Some gestures never needed applause. They were the lamp in a winter window left burning for whoever came after. He watched Liam adjust the small photo beneath the glass, the one that showed the crowd rising behind the ribbon, and nodded once. The light caught on the case again, and so did the town. If this story moved you, share it forward.